Let's do a show. I didn't shave today. Didn't clean up at all. Cindy's making dinner downstairs, and she said, I got 45 minutes to do a show. So let's see if we can do that in 45 minutes. A lot of new people are listening to the show, watching the show, because I've been out there in the activist world. So this is a test show for you new people to find out if you like the guests, the interviews, or do you like me? Because the show is all me. Oh yeah, guess I better get things started. From the studio in the bonus room above the garage on the north side of Cary at the foot of Mount Belzoni, this is the Triangle Talk Show. It is episode 54, March 17th, 2019. Have I got all that right? Yeah, it's just a ramble. Just me sitting here talking as I promised. Title of the episode is Great Show. Or with the question mark, Great Show. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, you are fortunate to be tuned into this episode because this is going to be a really great one. Or not. You know, I hear that all the time from show hosts, on podcasts, on TV shows, all over the media. This is going to be a really great show. You are so lucky to be tuned in tonight, today, whatever. A couple things about that. They haven't done the show yet. I don't know if it's going to be a great show. Maybe, maybe not. You know, maybe they got some really good guests lined up and they were expecting it to be a good show, but it might not be. And the other thing is they say it every time. It's like a verbal tick. It's automatic. It might not even be in the script. You know, they just say it. I've mentioned this before. Finally, I've heard somebody else say something about that. This is Conan O'Brien from one of his shows a couple of weeks ago, and I will risk a YouTube copyright takedown with a little bit of Conan. Finally, somebody addressing this. Oh, it's going to be a really great show thing.
Welcome to the show. Thank you, all of you, for being here. We have an excellent program tonight. I think an excellent show.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we haven't done it yet, but we
yeah.
assume.
30% chance this will be an excellent show.
Right.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Conan. Finally, someone did that. Okay, I got a bunch of things that I've got lined up here, so we'll go through them as time permits till get the dinner call. Oh yeah, by the way, I am Gary Pierce. Whoops. There we go. Back to being the snowflake. This is not an activist episode. It's just a ramble episode. So, back to being the snowflake. Very first thing, North Carolina is facing another possibility of a cell phone ban. You know, this thing here. We all like to talk on them in our cars. You can't text in North Carolina. Texting is out, in theory. Still see a lot of people do it. Driving down the road, you see somebody wandering. Back in the old days, if you saw somebody wandering around their lane, you know, crossing the lane, going off the road a little bit, you pretty much assume they were drunk. Now, pretty much assume that they're texting. Could be both. Could be drunk texting. So there's another bill that's working its way through the legislature that would prohibit holding the phone, doing anything on the phone, making calls, if you're actually holding the phone. No phone calls, holding the phone. Even at a red light. You know, think you can get away with it sitting at a red light? Okay, I'll just get a quick call in here. And I think texting is also, can't do that at a red light. I wouldn't have a big problem with that, except that people would abuse it. Plus, you're sitting there behind somebody at a red light, and the light turns green, and they're busy texting. So, get out of the way. Wake up, stupid. Okay, so in the event that this passes and you're not supposed to make a phone call while you're holding the phone, the deal is that if you've got the phone mounted someplace where you can use it, I think the bill says, with a button push or two, that you can then make your call hands-free. Now, out there in testing land, all of the stories that I've seen say that doesn't make any difference whether you're hands-free or whether you're holding the phone. Your level of distraction is about the same. Can still cause the same amount of problems. So that notwithstanding, because we all want to be able to make calls, our legislators are not going to ban us from being able to do that. They would all be run out of office on a rail if they told us no calls at all. But the safety people, probably insurance companies, are telling them, you got to do something about people talking on their phones. So the deal is you mount it someplace. And so how do you do that? Well, my wife came up with, she didn't invent this. She found this online. She found this little deal. I got my Feebob camera working. Yeah, I think I do. Sorry, for you folks in the audio audience, I will attempt to paint a verbal picture. I'm holding up a box that this thing comes in. They call it the Easy Clip. It's from a company called Torras, Torras. I got this on Amazon. It's about $15. I've seen all kinds of different configurations, different devices for mounting a phone. Some of them stick to your dashboard. They stick to your windshield. Some states that's not legal. They hold the phone in this grasp, and you have to pop it in and out. Always seems difficult. So this device, this Easy Clip car mount, I'll hold up the actual device. It's a little round circle, and behind it is, I guess the best way I can describe it is sort of like Jaws, but not like a vice grip, just simple. I'll put a picture on the website. Something. What it's going to do is it's going to grasp one of your vent louvers, and that's how it holds itself into the car. And I can demonstrate that. I'm going to put a little card. Pretend this card is your vent louver, and your Easy Clip just slides onto the louver. And my experience so far is that vent will then be permanently pointed as low as it can go. Now the vent, the Easy Clip is going to prevent the clip from try this again. The Easy Clip is going to prevent the vent, no wonder I'm having trouble saying this, from closing entirely. But it's going to kind of point down because this thing will put some weight on it. And the vent's not designed to stay up with some weight. But that's not really a problem. It's just going to be one vent. You probably have several. And it's still going to be pointed in a useful direction, down into the car. So that's the way the Easy Clip gets mounted on the car. Now, how does it connect to the phone? This is a big magnet. The front of the clip is a very strong magnet. And then you get a couple things to go on the phone. I'm holding up a circle, what looks like a circle. What's on that circle is a clear piece of plastic. So not quite cellophane, like tape. And you peel that off and you put it on the back of your phone. And then on top of that, you put a metal disc. And so I'm going to show you the back of my phone with all this stuff on it. So if I get the light right, you can see this is the clear piece of plastic that will go on the phone, and then there's the metal disc. And both of these have adhesive, strong adhesive to hold things together. The reason for the intermediate layer of plastic is that there's a little tab, and if I want to take this off my phone, the easy way to do that is you reach in and pull that tab up, and that will peel off. So on the back of the phone, this whole thing looks ugly. For those of you that care about the aesthetics of your phone, you might not want to do this because it looks kind of ugly. I don't care. In fact, I've got a case on my phone, a very ugly case, a very nice case. It's got a kickstand on it, so I can set the phone down and it will stay a little bit vertical so I can watch videos or read stuff. Well, there I am, reflected in my phone. So I don't care about the about the aesthetics. If you've got a beautiful new $1,000 iPhone, you don't want to put a case on it, you don't want to mess it up in any way, well, you're going to have to find another solution. But if you're willing to make the phone look terrible, well, this is one way to do it. And then, so now here's the base, the Easy Clip base, and here's my phone, and whack. Magnet holds it on there just fine, securely enough. I've gone over lots of bumps. It hasn't fallen off. It has actually let go of the louver of a vent one time. It kind of worked its way out. So you want to make sure you push it onto the louver of the vent now and then, but it holds pretty securely. It's also it's rubberized there, so it's not going to scratch the vent or do anything to permanently damage the car. Okay, so your phone is sitting there. Once again, this is going to hang down a little bit, but there's a lot of adjustment to the tilt of your phone once it's on the Easy Clip. Easy Clip, yeah, right? Okay, Easy Clip. And it so now it's it's sitting there on your dashboard. Hi, Conan. Conan's in the picture in the background, and you can punch the buttons and do stuff. I guess the way the bill is written, that you don't want to have to dial numbers, a 7-digit number. Not, I can hear Cindy banging something in the background. I don't know if that's coming through the microphone or not. Making dinner. I don't know if you want to be dialing, the 10-digit area code plus a 7-digit number, dialing that on the phone while it's on the dashboard. I think that's still going to be a problem. If you've got my phone with Google on it, will let me specify numbers to call just by shouting, hey, is this going to work? Let's find out. Hey, Google. Hey, Google. Call my wife.
Calling Cindy Pierce wife mobile.
It's working. Hang up. Hang up. Hang up. Hang up. Okay, so I can do that with voice activation. And you can put some shortcuts on a screen so you can dial some things with one button. Anyway, that's the way to do it. It is also very handy for having that hanging up on your dashboard if you're going to use Google Maps. And I don't know how I would get anywhere in the world anymore without Google Maps. I can remember how to drive a few places, but a lot of places, and especially if you want to see traffic, even if you know how to drive someplace, if you're going to be going on the Beltline or the highway, you need Google Maps with its traffic up there to tell you what it's going to be like and find a better way to go. Often I will say it's not rush hour. Everything's going to be fine. What could possibly go wrong? I'll just get on Interstate 40 and then wham, in a traffic jam. So I actually got a second one of these easy clips. I put one in my car and it was great. And now I'm riding with Cindy and she's got one in her car and, I've got no place to put my phone. So I bought this second one. So I'll stick that in her car. If you've got a few devices that you want to be able to put on, you can buy these little discs separately. And I found several similar devices on Amazon that were cheaper. This was $15 or $16, and I think it was Prime. Found some that were cheaper, down to $9 or $10. But this is what Cindy had, so I decided to get that one, just to make sure they stayed completely compatible. Again, the magnet is here, so if you use your phone as a compass, it's not going to work when the magnet's on it. I gotta remember, for the video, I can't just do this in front of my eyes. It's not going to work when the magnet's on it. It's going to mess up the compass. But this piece, this little metal disc, is just what the magnet sticks to, the thing that goes onto the back of the phone. That's just what the magnet sticks to. And doesn't mess up the compass that's on your phone. Okay, so I guess that's our public service announcement for the show. Tom Tillis, Terrible Tom, is flip-flop on the border wall emergency resolution override. A lot of people have been calling him a chicken for doing that. A couple of weeks ago, he put an op-ed in the Washington Post saying that he was going to vote for the emergency resolution override. That is the bill that came out of the House of Representatives, easily passed there because it's democratically controlled now, then went to the Senate where it had to be voted on. Now, that's kind of interesting because Mitch McConnell, the leader of the Senate, can decide what bills are going to be voted on in the Senate. And if he doesn't want a bill to be voted on, he just doesn't bring it up. Except for this emergency resolution. I'm calling it an override. I might not be using technically the right language. I didn't look it up. If one chamber decides they want to override a president's emergency resolution, the way that bill had been originally set up, the way that law was set up, if one chamber decides they want to override it, the other chamber has to vote on it. I don't know how quickly. Didn't seem like the Senate did it that quickly. Took a couple weeks, but they finally did. And they passed it. Even though the Republicans control the Senate by 1 or 2 votes, I guess, 12 Republicans broke ranks, mostly Republicans that weren't facing a re-election in the next cycle, 2020. 12 Republicans broke ranks and voted to override the president's emergency declaration on building a border wall. Tom Tillis said that he would. Most of the Republicans, safe to say most, maybe even safe to say all, didn't vote to override the emergency declaration because they disagree with the border wall. Most of them are supporters of the border wall, including Tom Tillis. What they disagree with is using an emergency resolution to fund one when Congress has already decided not to fund it. So Tom Tillis put a op-ed in the Washington Post saying that he was going to vote to override the border wall emergency resolution because separation of powers. He supports the wall. Wall is great. Trump is great. Just, it's an overreach of executive power to do that. So then, when the time for the vote came, well, there were 12 senators that did vote to override it, 12 Republicans and all the Democrats. And Tillis changed his mind. We call that a flip-flop. And so a lot of people are saying, well, he just chickened out. Trump got to him. He chickened out. Or he was afraid of a primary challenge from someone farther to his right. And that certainly had been suggested by the Republican Party and Republicans in general. In the 2020 election, when he's going to be up for election again, he would get challenged in the primary by someone coming in from the right. And so what I'm saying is, I don't think it was a chicken. I think it was his ability to read the Tea Party leaves. We don't have much of a Tea Party anymore. Nobody's calling it that, but that's the Tea Party a few election cycles ago. Tea Party candidates got in there and challenged a lot of moderate Republicans in primaries and primaried them out. And we elected a lot more very conservative congressmen and Congress people and senators when they got challenged by the Tea Party candidates, and Tea Party candidates won the primaries. And in most cases won the general elections, although sometimes they were too extreme for their state and they lost the general, but they did very well. It's big. I guess 2010 is a big Tea Party revolution election. So, chicken, Tom Tillis. Well, no, I think he just could tell which way the wind was blowing. It is a limited ability to lead. He stated his position, and then he used a fig leaf of saying, well, the president supports changing the emergency resolution bill or law to make it more difficult to do this in the future, because then Democrats might use it to say things like, the climate's an emergency, and do things that Congress hasn't authorized because climate's an emergency. That one may be an emergency. Anyway, Tillis couldn't lead his party to follow their principles, and at least he's afraid he can't lead his party to follow their principles and follow that idea that not such a good idea for a president to just say, oh, okay, can't get it through Congress? I'll declare it an emergency. I wanted to say something about flip-flopping in general. I don't have a problem with politicians that change their minds about things. It's a dangerous thing for a politician to do because they will be charged with flip-flopping. They'll draw that charge immediately, but it'll come back to haunt them, especially in the next election cycle. The primary, they'll be primaried from the right, and in the general election, they'll just get that charge as, oh, he's a flip-flopper. But so I don't have a general problem with a politician that changes their mind on something. If they're doing it for a valid reason, new information has come to light, changes their position. In this case, I think what Tillis did and what he's worried about says more about his constituency than it does about him, because they claim strong adherence to the Constitution, strict constructionists. We believe that the framers got it right, but not if it gets in the way of their political goals, at least in this case. Expediency over integrity. But that's not an exclusive condition of people on the right. So, don't get too excited about calling them out on it this time, because it won't be long before something like that happens on the left as well. It's pretty common practice on both sides. But just general flip-flopping, not too worried about that. It may be the only political thing I've got to talk about on this episode of the Triangle Talk Show, this monologue, this ramble. Interesting thing happened earlier today. I was out to lunch with Cindy, my wife, and we were waiting at a popular restaurant, especially on weekends, waiting to get in, standing on the sidewalk at a little strip mall nearby. The restaurant, by the way, was Briggs. So this episode of the Triangle Talk Show is brought to you by Briggs. This was the one in Cary. A lot of people waiting to get in, a few people out on the sidewalk. It's not too chilly outside today. And Cindy noticed that there was a blind man standing at the curb facing the parking lot, waiting. And she noticed an Uber, a car with the Uber sticker on it, across the aisle, just kind of sitting there in one of the rows, not in a parking place, right in front of some parked cars, also sitting there, waiting. And she put two and two together and said, probably the blind guy's waiting for that Uber, and the Uber doesn't know. So he's waiting for someone to notice him. She noticed that she could tell the guy was blind because he had the white cane with the red tip. Apparently the Uber driver didn't notice that. So she goes up to the blind guy and says, "Are you waiting for an Uber?" And he says, "Yes." And she said, "Well, it's right over there." And she hails the Uber guy and gets them together. And that led me to wonder, isn't there anything in the Uber app that will notify a driver that he's picking up a blind passenger, so that he doesn't sit there waiting for someone to hail him and say, "Here I am." So I actually did a Google search on that question, and I came up with an article. It's in on a website called the Chicago Lighthouse. And I think, don't know a lot about Chicago Lighthouse. I don't know if it's all blind oriented stories for people who are blind or more generally disabled. In any case, there was this article called "My Experience as a Blind Uber Passenger. Are Ride-Sharing Services Worth It?" And the summary of the article I will give you is that, yes, the blind passenger was very happy with the additional mobility that a blind person can get if they're using one of the ride shares, Uber, Lyft, some of the others. And they compared it to taking taxis. So it was a whole lot better, a whole lot easier. For one thing, not having to deal with the money, thing in the app. The app worked pretty well with the voice readers on their phones, and you don't have to deal with money at all. It's all taken care of. So I was pretty happy with it. He did describe going through the app and talking to the driver about what they can see, and he said the app will give you the opportunity to say that there's a disability involved, but it wasn't specific to being blind. And I'm thinking, that doesn't seem great. But as I was going through this article, I realized I don't know when he wrote this. Is this contemporary? Is this a few years ago? And as I'm looking at it on their website, and this is not the author's fault, this is the way the website is set up, and this may be my biggest point in this entire discussion. Nothing to do with Uber or a blind passenger or the way that they can take advantage of ride sharing. It's websites. I'll do a lot of research on websites and look up things. And when you get to the article, you get to the story, there's no date on it. Let me get my little title out of the way here. There we go. There's no date here. You can't tell when he wrote it. So I'm looking through it. Is there any indication of when he wrote it? Nope. Nothing. Get to the bottom of the story. There's nothing there. And then finally I went down and looked a little lower and saw some comments that were posted, and they have dates. August 25th, 2015. So that's almost 4 years ago. And things very well might have changed. I looked through the other responses that I got to my Google search, didn't find anything specific, found some things from Uber themselves where they're talking about how to use the app if you've been disabled. But it doesn't look like they've got anything that says specifically blind passenger. You got to look for the passenger. He's not going to be looking for you. One of those things that maybe could be better. Moving on. There's a lot of movies out there. It's incredible how many movies get made every year. Get through the theaters. Mostly, never hear about them. They don't advertise on TV. If you see a movie, if you go to the movies, you may see a preview for some of them that are coming up in the previews, but not even all of them. Go, right now to Flickster or a movie app and look at all the current movies. How many of them have you ever heard of? And I don't go to that many movies in theaters. Most of the ones that I go to are going to be the blockbusters, usually the Marvel or the DC movies. If something's getting really good reviews and I think it's something I might like to see, I'll go see it in the theater. But often I'm willing to wait for it to show up on streaming. Or if it doesn't show up on streaming, we are, Cindy and I, maybe the last people on earth that still have the Netflix DVD subscription and use it enough that it's cheaper than buying DVDs, but sometimes just barely. So we'll get the DVD on Netflix instead of waiting for streaming, because that may never happen. I suppose we could also, and this might be cheaper, I suppose, because you can pay for a movie rental online, Google and Apple and Amazon, for a couple of bucks. Typically, to rent it for 48 hours or so is like $5. You could buy the download as well. That's usually about 20 or so. Yeah, come to think of it, probably ought to skip the. I think it's $8 or $9 a month for the Netflix. For as much as we actually use it, probably be better to just rent them, or get better at actually using the DVD stuff on Netflix. Anyway, I forget where I was going with that. There are a lot of movies out there, and I kind of rely on the Rotten Tomatoes score as an indication of whether I'd be even interested in going. I may have heard a little bit about the movie. Read a review if it shows up in the paper, or read about it online. Something has got to catch my attention. But if I'm just kind of scanning through the movies that are in the theater today, maybe one day I think I've got a little bit extra time. Cindy and I might want to go do something, and just scan quickly through the movies that are in the theaters today. And I'll look at their Rotten Tomatoes scores to see if it's something I want to see. Rotten Tomatoes has two scores. They've got a score from critics, an aggregate of critics, and then a score from the audience. And I'll look at both. Sometimes there's a big disparity. Sometimes critics will love a movie and give it a high score. An audience will be so meh. A little less often, the critics will really hate a movie. They'll, their scores, it's a percentage score, 0 to 100. The critics will be down in the 40, 30% range. And the audience will be in the 60, 70, 80% because they like it. It goes both ways, but usually it's kind of even. It won't be exact, but kind of even. And I think something that's getting knockout scores, 80% and 90%, I'll give it some consideration. Then I'll go take the time to read a review and a synopsis and see if it's the kind of movie I might like to go see. But there's been a problem. In some kinds of movies, some trolls have been gaming the scores. Now, the only scores that trolls can game are the audience scores. And they've been gaming scores that for movies that violate their what? I don't know. A few things. Their politics, their sensibilities. They're trolls. They're evil people. So you'll look at a movie, and this has happened more with movies that are coming up than movies that are in the theaters right now. And so how the audience can score that, the critics may have seen a preview. They get a pre-release so that they can rate it in the few days before the movie shows up. How the audience can do that, I don't know, but Rotten Tomatoes let them do that for a while. And if the trolls have a beef with the way the movie is, and lately there have been some from Star Wars. Some of the Star Wars movies have been trolled to low reviews, from pre-reviews from the audience, because in this case they didn't meet canon. They didn't like the way that the studios were changing the Star Wars universe a little bit, or not. At least they thought. But even more often, it happens if something is violating their political sensibilities, and a lot of these lately have been white men not liking the politically correct or female-oriented movies, and they'll vote them way, way down. The story that I saw, that I'm pulling this information from, described it as they're targeting female-led blockbusters, and the current one is Captain Marvel, one of the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies, which I went to see. Here's what Rotten Tomatoes has for Captain Marvel now. The critics were warm, but a little lukish, giving it 79%. Some of the other Marvel movies were in the high 80s, even in the 90s. Everybody loved Black Panther. Thought that was great. On the DC side, everybody loved Wonder Woman. Thought that was great. The Trolls, maybe not quite so much. Before Captain Marvel came out, and I thought it was a good movie. I would go along with the 79%. I mean, that's a good score. It said it's a good movie, just not a great movie. And I enjoyed it, and I pretty much never go to see these things in the theaters a second time, but I will definitely watch them if they come out streaming, or maybe get the DVD pretty quick when it's available, because I could never get everything that's in these movies the first time, especially the Marvel movies. They're the cinematic universe, the Avengers, the Iron Men, the Trolls, the Thors, Captain Americas. The storylines all intertwine. I have gone so far as to look up things online to have it explained to me. And then I'll go back and watch the movie again and catch a lot of the connections between the movies that I didn't catch the first time. And most of these takes 2, 3, 4 before I think I'm even conversant with the way things are working. And Captain Marvel is very much a part of all of that. So I will watch that again, but I probably won't go back to the theater. I'll probably order the DVD right away I wouldn't be surprised if I haven't already put it in my Netflix DVD queue. That's the soonest I would see it again. And that'll be a few months. So right now, the critics are saying 79%. And the audience is saying 62%. But before the movie came out, the audience was saying 35%. And that was a score that was dictated by the trolls. And the trolls don't like Brie Larson. A strong female lead in the first Marvel movie that was a completely female-led hero movie. Many of the other people are from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Well, a couple of the other people from the Marvel Cinematic Universe are in this. It was set in the 90s, so we don't have an Iron Man yet. We don't have a Captain America yet. That's in between when he was frozen following World War II and then thawed out. I don't think that Thor has been around yet. I think this is set before just about everything else in the Marvel series. So the problem they have with Brie Larson is that in a previous movie that she was in, a movie that was not getting good critic reviews, probably not good audience reviews from the predominantly white male audience. She was upset with that because she didn't think that it was a movie, and I'm trying to remember what the name of it was, and I don't remember now. I don't think I wrote it down. She said the movie was not really made for a white male audience. It was made primarily for a female audience, and there weren't very many female critics getting to see it and getting a voice in the media. And so she did some things to make that happen. And her language was sort of like, well, I didn't make that movie for you. We didn't make that movie for you. So if you don't like it, well, that's okay, but it's not your movie. Well, they extrapolated that to Brie Larson in general and to Captain Marvel movie and are saying, well, if you didn't make this movie for us, if you don't like us, well, we're going to vote you down in advance. And hence the 35% Rotten Tomatoes rating, excuse me, from the audience score. So Rotten Tomatoes has made some changes. They say they're not going to let users comment ahead of a movie release. They're altering and minimizing the want to see metric ahead of a movie's release. That's something that you could have clicked on if you signed up for their website. You know, this is here. On the website, when you see want to see it, I couldn't vote for this because I don't have a login for Rotten Tomatoes. But the trolls did, and so they're going to downplay that to some extent. Let's see, a metric used to track the audience anticipation for a film will still exist, but it'll be changed to something more like a Facebook like. That's what it says. And they're going to change a few other things they haven't disclosed yet. So probably be useful. We'll see. Once Captain Marvel came out, the audience score went up to 62%. I think that's still heavily troll influenced, but not as much as what was happening when the movie first, before the movie had come out. You can see the comments as well, and if you go through the comments, the ones that are giving the movie 1 star have that trollish commentary, very similar from one to another. You know, if she doesn't want us to watch our movies, well, I'm not going to go see it, and I'll give her 1 star. So sorry, trolls. I'm getting notices. I've got a notice from my wife that says it's going to be dinner. So I'm going to wrap this up pretty quickly. Note that the North Carolina House is going to be broadcasting sessions by video sometime soon. Story I saw. I didn't put any details here in my rundown, but the story I saw said that they're looking at ramping that up and acquiring equipment and stuff like that. I can show them how to do it if they want. I think they're probably going to be a little more professional than me. And finally, one final thing, because it's kind of an interesting, curious thing. USA Today has rated 10 cities as the most aggressive drivers, cities with the most aggressive drivers in the nation. And, well, what they're saying is it's a fact of life. Nobody ever says the drivers in their hometown are talented and responsible. No, they're erratic and irresponsible. And my friend Jeff always says that if you're following somebody, everybody going slower than you is a moron. Everyone going faster than you is an idiot. Now, who's got it worse? Actually, the study was done by Gas Buddy. And here are the top 10. Number 10 is Las Vegas. 9 is Austin, Texas. 8, Detroit. 7, Orlando. 6, San Francisco. No, 6, San Diego. 5, San Francisco. 4, Atlanta. 3, Sacramento. 2, Philadelphia. And the number 1 city for aggressive driving is Los Angeles. And then they go on to get all the way up to number 30. And just outside the top 10 list, at number 11, is Charlotte. And then it goes up from there. Pittsburgh, Phoenix, Boston, Dallas, Fort Worth, Chicago, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Baltimore, Tampa, St. Pete, Washington, D.C., San Antonio, Houston, New York. New York's 23. Fairly nice drivers in New York, I guess. Kansas City, St. Louis, Denver, Portland, Cincinnati, Seattle, and then number 30 is Minneapolis, St. Paul. So, yes, sorry, folks, Raleigh is not on the list at all. Evidently, we're not that bad. So, smells good. I gotta go get dinner. That'll be it for this episode of the Triangle Talk Show. For those of you that have been tuning into the program because I've been going out there doing activist stuff and talking to people. It's sort of like gaining an audience one person at a time. I'll interview you and give you my card, and hopefully you'll watch, not just the show you are on. And tell somebody. There's the key. Tell somebody. Tell everybody you know. Oh, yeah, I came across this local podcast here that doing stuff for the Triangle with this guy that thinks he's a professional broadcast talent, but boy, he's not. Well, he's having a good time anyway. Worth trying out once. I saw your text. I'm wrapping it up. All right. So tell everybody you know. Go on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I guess Instagram is the thing now, right? Facebook for old people, Twitter, old people. Yeah. Nobody goes there anymore. It's too crowded. Instagram, whatever. Mail someone a letter. Tell them triangletalkshow.com. So that's it. I am Gary Pierce. I am your snowflake. Goodbye. Over and out.